Hey Maxie, how are you? Can raise your hand there. How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Good, good. You must be an Android user there.
Yeah, no.
Nice, nice. Uh,
Yeah.
just seeing because you can't. I guess your Instagram doesn't link. It's only. I don't know why. That's a weird thing. So you're from Brooklyn as well?
Yes, sir.
Nice, nice. I'm in Inwood.
And what?
Yeah. I'm just getting like. Oh wow, there's some people came into the room. Um, so basically, what I'm doing here is to go through, and I'm going to edit a photo, and just kind of walk through the process.
Okay.
Um, and you can go to my YouTube channel, and on there you can see the stream there, and you can also ask questions. Um, uh, and then that's kind of how you can see it. There's a couple second lag, um, and then if people want to raise their hands, like if they have questions or anything along the process, or anything like that, I'm happy to answer any questions. But yeah, that's
Okay.
really it. So I'll talk it through. It's not that exciting. While like if you're not watching the stream, it's probably not going to be that exciting. But if you want to check out the stream, you would just Google NYCapture photography in the YouTube channel.
Okay. I'm doing it right now.
And how about Maxie? Do you plan to hang out for a little bit and check it out for try it for 15 minutes or something here?
Yeah.
Because why don't you? I can make you a mod just for a short time, and that way, if you can like kind of reset the room every 5-10 minutes, just tell people, hey, this is where you can go to check out the stream and things like that. Do you mind doing that?
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Type in that in. Right.
Yeah, just tell them that basically. So like, just this basically like hello. Resetting the room is just basically um, that. Hey, everyone. What we're gonna do is do an edit of a photo, and I'm streaming it on my YouTube channel. So if you want to see that, you can click on my bio, and the information is there. Or you can just go to YouTube and search for NYCapture photography, and then you'll see the stream there. So that's how you
Okay.
get into it. And then if anybody has questions, they can wave their hand and come up and ask a question about what's going on or something like that. Um, and if anybody really has, I mean, I'll get started in a couple minutes. If anybody is like dying to have me edit one of their photos instead, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
But if everybody, uh, just raise your hand to chat and stuff, so we don't just have like chaos of people just talking over each other because then it'll be impossible to go through the.
Got it.
So I see if you guys see Melissa's been in here and Carolina, Carolina. Um, if Jasmine, I don't know if anybody has a photo that they would like me to edit of them. I'm happy to do that. That's something you'd be interested. You could raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll get. Cool. Well, I guess I don't see anybody. I only got one viewer here in the on the live stream. Oh, there's three, I guess. There we go. Three. You guys, can you flash your mic if you guys are in if you're in there now? Okay. Melissa or Carolina or Louis, or checking out the live stream?
I'm just trying to find it.
Okay. And Carolina? Yeah, I figure it's not really about quantity. I mean, like just about quality. If you guys are into it and you want to check out the process that I go through and ask questions about anything along the way, I can. Actually, I'll give you your first chance to reset the room.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you want to check out the editing, it's going to be on YouTube right now. It's live NYCapture photography live stream. Again, that's NYCapture photography. And Alex is going to do a live presentation for us. And if you have any questions, please raise your hand so we can bring you on. Thank you.
Very nice job. Very professional. It's just NYCapture though. There's no. It's NYCapture photography. Go in YouTube and search, or just Google it. Go to Melissa, you in there? Were you able to find it, Melissa?
Can you repeat?
NYCapture photography.
Yeah, I am.
Let me take NYCapture photography. There is a link in my bio, but you can't. If I just put in NYCapture photography into Google, it's the second thing that comes up.
Okay, I'm gonna try this copy.
Or in my bio, there is also a link tree, and it's in the link tree as well.
Yep, there it is. Thank you.
Dominique, were you able to find that? Dominique, were you able to find it?
Still looking. Just it.
Yeah, anybody else? We'll get started in just a little while, but basically I'm just going to walk through the process and, take any questions or thoughts or anything while I do it that people have. And you can access the stream. The stream's like a 2 or 3 second delay. So I'll try to like kind of go slowly on each step. And also you can also ask questions. There's a chat on the live stream that you can just type questions there while we do it, or just ask questions. But I also want, I think I'm pretty good at this, but there's many different ways to do the same things. So if somebody else has, a technique that they like or something, and they're like, whoa, why are you doing that? Why don't you do this? I am more than happy to listen. I would love to hear your take on things and try different techniques. All right, so I know Melissa, you found it. Maxie's there. Right now, it's just my back. my desktop. Dominique, you're looking for it?
I found it. I'm there.
Okay, very exciting. So again, you can type questions there. It's, you know, if you want to type something out. Do you want me to go ahead with one of mine, or do anybody have a photo? You know, I like ideally a portrait or something, or a headshot, like a person is ideal. If one of you guys has a, you know, I'll probably just do mine because the raw file will take a while to try to email to someone. All right, I'm gonna get started with the 5 of us here, and then if somebody joins in, you know, maybe not every one person, but if like 2 or 3 people come in, Maxie, if you know anybody, just let them know where they can go. So let's start out. I am going to, does anybody have a preference? You guys want to take a vote here? I was primarily going to do it in, I'll do it in Lightroom and Photoshop. Does that work best for, I mean, I use Capture One as well, but anybody have a preference between me doing Lightroom or Capture One?
I like, so I'm still trying to learn.
Be really interested in Capture One. Lightroom. I'm down for both.
Okay, I will. So I'll do Capture One to begin with, right? And then I can show you Lightroom. The only thing that I use Lightroom for, in the first place, is usually if I have a batch of photos, like a whole bunch that I have to get to a client. And so, you know, if I got to get them like 10 or 15 shots and they all have to be pretty even color and everything, and I just want to do a quick job, I use Lightroom. But if I'm going to go deep into any one photo, then I use Capture One and Photoshop. I mean, I always use Photoshop for the retouching for the skin and stuff like that. I don't use anything else but that. So I will start in Capture One. And so I've already got them in here. This was my old intern, her acting headshots. And so let's find one of these. Do like, okay. I'm going to start with this one. And so we're going to start with this one. And if you see the first step that I do, and can you everybody see it well in the stream?
For those who just joined us, Alex is doing stream to NYCapture photography. NYCapture photography on YouTube.
Thank you so much. Because I was like, wait, can I drop?
So I can check this. Yeah, you can see it here. There we go. Great. So first steps first, right? I opened it. It's a raw file. And the first thing that I do is actually go and check the lens profile and make sure. Sometimes I want the distortion correction on, and sometimes I don't. So now it's on automatically at 100%, and there's it off. And I like it off better on this one. See how it looks? It gets more bowed out. It gets more round and too big. I like it off. So I'm going to take that off. That's really a personal preference. It depends on the lens. It depends on, you know, how you like it, but I take that off. The next thing that I do is to go in and in Capture One, this is a little glass thing. And it's the 4th tab in this, and I take the sharpening off completely. So again, these same steps are apply in Lightroom and in Capture One. You want to take the sharpening off first if you're doing a portrait or beauty retouch or a headshot.
I don't think we can You're saying. I can't yet.
Can I have the name that I'm looking for? And then what?
Yes. That's NYCapture photography.
Thanks, got it.
So the thing is, yeah, I did this before. I don't know whether it's better if you're listening on YouTube. So it's a hard thing. If you can do both, if you're watching with your computer, I forgot, I'm not talking, that you can hear me on the computer and the live stream or through the through Clubhouse. But do you not see it now? You don't see Capture One?
I see YouTube, like your desktop.
You see, okay. Let me reset it then.
I could see it.
You can see it? I mean, I moved the Google to the side now.
I can see it now.
Okay. So yeah, it is a bit of a delay. Like, can you see me on the side, my little camera?
Yes.
Okay, so now I just raised my hand. See how long that takes for it to appear? Yeah, it seems way behind.
Yeah, a few seconds.
Okay. So let me close these other tabs though. Try and, okay. So anyway, so now I'm in here and it's the fourth tab over here, the first step. And so the thing is, yeah, I know that some of these, I mean, the whole point is to watch is you're watching it happen and stuff, but again, it's kind of going step by step the process. And if you follow my YouTube channel, I'll do these more often, and I think just direct it may be easier than, you know, the Clubhouse thing may be tough. But it worked out okay the last time I did this. Anyway, first step is to take the sharpening down. The camera already adds so much. There's so much built-in sharpening already. So I take the sharpening down, and I do the lens correction, and that's the first two steps. The next step is the color profile, the ICC profile. And so I go, right now I have a Sony, so this is the generic profile, and I switch it to the Pro Standard one. That's about it. Now I might mess with the color, the white balance, just a tiny bit or something. And I think it's a little too yellow. So I'm gonna pull it over to the blues a little bit and just give her a little bit, like something like that. I think looks good. And now I'm gonna go in and I just wanna even this out a little. So I like to make the image really flat. I don't want a lot of contrast because when I'm editing, like she's, you know, young, has beautiful skin, but if you look at this, her skin, look at all the bumps and stuff like that. If you see in her skin, because this camera is 62 megapixels and the lens is super sharp, you get super, super high resolution and you just see all of the blemishes and things like that. So, like I said, first step, I do the lens correction and I took it off 100%, lowered the sharpening. I mean, look how sharp this is with no sharpening. Took off the sharpening, then adjust the white balance a little bit. And now the next step is going to be, I just want to even out the overall exposure and everything a bit. So I go to the exposure tab and I'm just going to pull the blacks over a little bit and maybe pull up the shadows a tiny bit, just a little bit. And that's really it. I may actually, because this is too sharp, the skin looks so, you know, so detailed, I'm going to pull the clarity down, maybe minus 10. And that's really it. I'm going to leave, I put the contrast down and the shadows up. There we go. So that's it. Like, that's it for this, for what I'm going to do in Capture One. Real exciting. So basically Capture One is just the raw editor in this process. And you can do it in Lightroom, you can do it in Capture One, you can do it in Camera Raw. But basically, the idea is to kind of take away the contrast to a certain extent, because we're going to build that back up later in our next editing steps. So I just want to flatten out the image as much as I can to a certain extent. I go even further, like in a fine art portrait, I would go even further into flattening this out. But this, I'm just going to leave it like that. Maxi, can you reset there and give the guys below heads up?
Hello, everyone. Alex is doing a live editing on YouTube, NYCapture photography. Just type that in the search engine, search bar, NYCapture photography.
And so I'll give you a couple moments, but Melissa or Dominic, the original, or Maxi, do you have questions so far? Because the next step's just going to Photoshop and getting into the skin and stuff like that with where we're at, with the first phase. Or is there anything any of you guys would have done different in your raw processing?
I just want to say the timing was impeccable because I just after like last month sat down to the computer on and I edit with Lightroom. Very interested that I you guys are doing.
Thank you for chiming in. I appreciate you. I like it. It's funny though, because there's everything, right? I love it. I fell in love with it, started using it all the time. And then I've actually now gone back to using Lightroom for a couple reasons, for just one thing for certain types of photos, but we won't get into that in this conversation. That's a whole different thing, but it has to do with how they handle the mids. And yeah, it's just a whole nother topic. But so basically, just to react, the first step was to open it in Capture One. I'm working with raw files to flatten out the image, literally using the lens correction. I take off the distortion correction, take out the sharpening, took down the contrast a little bit, took the clarity down a little bit, and then I took the blacks up a little. And the shadows up a little bit to just make it a little flatter, a little less contrasty, a little less sharp, just all in all, just a little flatter of an image. Because you can add sharpening later, you can add contrast later, you can add those things. But if you have a really sharp, contrasty image and you start editing on top of it, it's going to look awful in the end. So you want to flatten the image out. I don't do blemish removal and things like that in Capture One. They've started to have some tools that are cool, and I will show you. We'll go back to Capture One at the end, but for now, I just leave it like this and I open it in Photoshop. So everybody ready for me to move on to Photoshop now? You want to flash your mics there? Cool. Dominique, you ready? All right. Cool. So then I right click on it and there's edit with Adobe Photoshop 2021. And the settings, I leave it as a TIFF, 16-bit TIFF, uncompressed. And I open it. I'm working in Adobe RGB because my monitor can handle Adobe RGB. Some monitors don't have the full range of Adobe RGB. So you might want to just leave it in the regular RGB, but that I use 300 resolution, and so that's it. And I'm going to click on Edit Variant here, and it opens up. So then it opens the raw file. It'll then open a TIFF in Photoshop, and it just pops right open. And everybody flash your mic if Photoshop opened up in the stream here. Did it work? Okay, cool.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt.
No problem, Kevin.
This is Kevin. I just came in the room. Is there a link to the stream? Still watching us?
Yeah, if you Google or go to YouTube, it's NYCapture, NYCapture, photography. And on YouTube, there should be the live stream there. If you go in my bio, there's a link tree, and you can get to my YouTube that way too. Okay. So the first step that you do in Photoshop is always to duplicate the first layer here, because you don't want to edit on that first initial layer. So you can do Control J and duplicate it, and leave that first layer totally, not messed with, and start a new layer. And then I start to go in here with the image, right? And my first step is often shaping the person. Like if they need, if I need to use the whatchamacallit tool, the liquify, and if I want to like mess with their, like changing the shape of their hair or something like that, I like the way that she looks here, so I'm not going to really. I guess I could do that. Let's liquify for a second real quick. And I will liquify and push down the top of her hair. So one cool thing in liquify, I don't know if you guys use this often, but there's a little freeze mask tool. It's about the 5th or 6th thing down. And you can then paint that on, right? And then whatever you paint that on doesn't get affected. So I'm going to paint that on the top so it doesn't pull down the top. And then I'm going to paint it around some of her hair here so this doesn't get messed up. And so I'm just leaving a little space that I'm going to push. And I use the first one, the forward warp tool, and use the brackets to make the thing bigger or smaller. And I make it about the size of the thing you want to affect. And then I'm just going to push this down a tiny bit, just tiny little nudges. You don't want to do a quick, just tap on the mouse and just tap it down a little bit. And then I can erase this freeze mask erase tool here. So that's it. And then if you click on the preview over here, you can see I just took that little bump down a little bit. That's all I'm going to really do here. I mean, you can go into this as if they really need some thinning someone's arms out or things like that. But that thaw tool is great so that you don't start, if you say you were going to try to squeeze her arms in here, so that you don't start messing up the shirt or something like that. So that's a good tool to know if you guys aren't familiar with that. So I'm going to hit OK. I'm done with that. And I shrunk her hair down a little bit. And now we're going to go in and start cleaning up her skin. And so I zoom in. And the first thing is getting rid of larger blemishes. So for that, I like to use a combination of either the patch tool, the spot healing brush tool, or the healing brush tool, or the clone stamp tool. Those are the 4 tools that I use the most. I'm going to start, I think, with the spot healing brush, and just go around and like large blemishes, any major spots, like little these spots here, and just go through and get rid of these. If I start to see that it's smudging the texture of the skin too much, then I'll try a different tool. And come in here and get rid of some of these, like this tool is good for the hairs. But any one of these tools, if you're close to an edge and something like this hair that's close to another line or things like that, it doesn't do well. You have to separate. That's when I go to the clone stamp tool and kind of separate, make sure the opacity is up to 100% and the flow's up, and like kind of break a piece off of the thing so that it's standing on its own, so that you can then come in and take it off. That's not that didn't work that well, but that's my point. You kind of want things to be on an island when you're using the spot healing tools, because if they're not on an island, if they're connected to something else, as you get closer to like the base of the scalp or something, they're going to smudge. So that's, you know, that's something to keep in mind. But I'm just going to come in here and, you know, do these things. We don't have to get crazy. But she still has a bunch of different stuff. So one of the tools I really like to use is, if you notice over here, some of this patchiness in her skin, it's darker. So a good tool for that is to use the healing brush tool and change the blending mode from normal to lighten. And you can do both ways. You can do darken or lighten. If you do lighten, it'll make dark spots become lighter. And if you do darken, vice versa. So I come over here and you hit Alt to select an area nearby that looks good. And then you can brush over these dark spots. And you got to keep hitting Alt every once in a while, picking new selection points and stuff. But if you see, it only affects the dark spots. It doesn't affect the light ones. So that's, again, it's another, without going into deep, frequency separation and dodging and burning. That's a good little cheat to use, that the spot healing brush or the healing brush tool and changing the blend mode. But again, as we get down here, if I try to get this very close edge, see, it smudges on the edge. So you have to be very careful around edges. That's when you need to get the clone stamp. So I'll get rid of it, hit Control Z to go back and come back in here. So that's one way. It's getting better. Get a few more of these. But if you see, I'm going to click it on and off. It's definitely getting better, but she's still got some blotchy skin there. So we're going to keep going with another, let's try another technique now. Why don't I pause for a second here and see if any of you guys have any questions or anything about where we're at so far.
Can you explain one more time the difference when to use a healing brush versus a spot healing brush?
The difference is that the spot healing brush tool is literally going to a spot and taking one little zit or something like that, one little pore, and it can be great for that. But if you drag it too far or too much, like you try to take too big of a spot using that, it can start to smudge. Like, I don't know if you saw that, like down here on the chin, I just used it, and it looks, there's a smudge mark. And so, like, literally one tiny little thing and it's fine, but if you start to smudge it too much, it doesn't look good. So that's when I'd go in and switch to the healing brush tool, because the healing brush tool samples an area nearby, and it just tends to, there's two ways you can use it: using the lighten mode like I am, and so it's only affecting the lightening the darker things, or you can just use it as normal mode, and the normal mode will replace, wherever you're selecting, it'll replace that spot with the other one. I find that I actually end up using the lighten and darken thing more than normal mode with that. But does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
And there's a difference too between if this is a headshot and it's meant to be seen, it's meant to be seen like this. They don't, actors don't even print out headshots anymore. So it's not going to be, for the most part, even printed out. And so it's not, this doesn't have to be a deep dive beauty retouch where every single pore is perfect. It's make the person look like themselves on a good day is really what we want to do. And so, so one other tool that I think what we could do here is, before I get into messing with that skin more on her chin over here, this is a great tool, is the patch tool, right? So the patch tool you can kind of use like the spot healing tool as well. You can come in and you can circle a little spot and then drag it over here, and you're just kind of sampling things, much like you did with, it's kind of like a spot. It's kind of a combination of the two of them. Just take a patch and move them around. And that's, see, I don't like that. That's too perfect. But anyway, you can use this. But here is the technique. This is a fun thing. See how dark it is under her eyes here? You don't want to just go in. You could go in and do lots of things. I could use the spot healing tool, you know, like I said, and do lighten this, make this a little bigger. If you notice my brushes, I always make them kind of an elliptical, instead of being fully round. It's just more like a pen, I guess, and just more the way it flows. I just like that better. So somebody taught me that once, and I love it, making it an elliptical. But I could come in here and just go bang and like kind of try to do that. But then it gets away the curve. It gets away that you're changing the shape of her face, and things like that. So I don't want to do that. So I hit Control Z. Another thing people do is take a clone brush and maybe take the opacity down to say like 35, take the flow down a little, maybe 60, and make a big brush, and they kind of sample and paint over things. So sample down here and then kind of paint in. Now that kind of works. You could kind of paint in, you know, sample in. So you're basically like copying some skin and making a low opacity, like a 30, and then kind of filling in with that. Like you have like a skin brush essentially. But again, that's a quick and easy way. Like if we go down to this nasty, the part on her down here, that can kind of work over, you know, over some of this area or something as a way to do that. But again, then you're losing all of the texture and you're losing all of the detail that I have this, you know, 62 megapixel camera and the whole purpose of it. So here is a technique. And well, this will get rid of some of that detail too. I mean, it all does to a certain extent. But take the patch tool, draw a patch around, say, let's go from there all the way underneath and this whole part here, right? And then drag it down below itself, maybe about to like about there, and let go. And now while it's still selected like that, hit Control Shift F. I'm on a Windows PC, so it's Command Shift F for Apple users. And then take the opacity from 100 down to, you know, you can look. 61 is too much. 40, you know, see what it looks like. I think somewhere around 36 is good for me. And you see that? Now, if I click on the layer, you can see it on and off. See what I did there? Still looks natural, but just kind of took down the highlights a bit and just kind of took down, just softened it out a bit. So I think that's magic. The place that works great for is up here above the nose can work great. But ideally with this, you want to pull it up to their forehead and you can't here. So I'd have to pull this down to like her chin. You don't want a huge difference in the contrast. So this might not work. Control Shift F, take it down to 10, maybe just really light. And let me see how that looked. Yeah, you can barely tell. Do this again over here on this eye. And pull it down. And then Control Shift F and take the opacity. Just look with your eyes. Always less is more. If you can see a dramatic change in something while you're messing with the slider, like it's just, then it's overdone. You want to go right to that point where you see it's just starting to change. And there you go. That's it. So here's on and here's off. So anybody have questions about that technique there at all? Or anything else so far?
Yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah, I'm learning a lot.
And so another spot here is this nose, like right there. Maybe pull that over to here. Control Shift F. Maybe 16. And over here, same thing. Pull that over. You don't want to do this everywhere, all over the whole face. And you want to be subtle with it. But I think it works well for some problem under the eyes, by the sides of the nose, sometimes the lips. You don't want to take away the smile lines and all that stuff completely, or else it looks weird. Under the chin, under the lips can be a spot if it's a little too dark or something under the lips. Pull that down. Control Shift F. Maybe just a little bit. 8, 9. Okay. I'm going to try that actually for this problem area over here a little bit too. But again, if you go over the line into the hair, that ain't going to work because you're going to blur it. So you have to stay within the boundary of the line, the border, or else it's not going to work. You want a somewhat like skin tone. Control Shift. Let's go down again, really light with this. 11, something like that. Okay. So that's something. So where are we at with her? Though the other thing, let me go down here quickly and get spot healing. This is a good, or the patch tool is good to go get this red spot. Patch these out, few the red spots. Okay. I don't know. Here. That's good. So I'm not going to get, I think that's pretty good. On her lip, let's just spot healing brush, just get these little imperfections on the lips. But see, on the lips is where you can really see it smudge. That's where that, it can smudge the lips with the spot brush. See, I don't like it. When you go on the lips, for some reason, it always gets smudgy. You got to be very fine with it. Fairly small brush and just take little bits. Yeah, see it smudges it. All right. So I'm not going to go crazy about this. Let me show you two more. I'll show you two more skin, one more skin technique. I'll show you just basic dodging and burning. And then we can hop into a couple other things here. So,
hey, Alex,
yep.
Sorry to cut you off. Just wanted to set the room
yep.
for the comers that are welcome. If you will go to YouTube, type in NYCapture photography, and you can follow us with the stream.
And I forgot, you can chat there. Thank you, Dominique. I forgot that, and she sent me a message there. So yeah, I'll try to check that more frequently. But basically, let's go into one more skin. Oh, there we go. Let me do one more skin thing, and then we'll go into a couple more things because you can go crazy with skin. But here is a dodge and burn technique, and just a general overview. Dodge means you're brightening it, and burn means you're darkening. Very simple. And so what you want to do, you can a good way to see it is to make it black and white. So if you go down to the bottom here and select, you go down a little circle down here and select and hit the black and white button and turn it to black and white. And you want to maybe pull down the reds a tiny little bit, make it more contrasty. There we go. Taking the yellows down a little bit too, right? Because I really just want to be able to see the highlights and the shadows, so I can see the highlights on her nose, under here, things like that. You can see the darkness and the shadow. The other thing, I could make a curve. So you select and hit curves, and then select a point on the line right about a quarter of the way up the line and pull that down a little bit. That'll make it even more contrasty. And so these are just helper layers. This is just so you can see it. And one thing you could do is select both of these. So you hold down Shift and select them both, and either hit the folder button or drag them down to the folder button. And then you made a group out of them. So you can call that, say, helper. And now you can turn these on or off just to be able to see what it looks like more contrasty, right? So let's turn them off for now. But you want to make a dodge and burn layer. So you just click down here, the little plus with the square, and make a new blank layer, and switch the blending mode of that layer to soft light. Now select a brush, and you want to take the brush down to, I made a custom brush, but you want just a soft brush, and take the opacity down to about 10%. This ideally works best with if you have a tablet and with a pen, but you can do it. You might even want to take the flow down and the opacity even a little more if you're not using a tablet, because it's very sensitive. So I'm gonna do it with the tablet and the pen. I have a Wacom tablet. I hated them at first. I got so used, I'm a computer guy. I'm so used to using my mouse for everything on the computer that I just liked it editing. But there's some things you just can't do with a mouse, and you get used to it, and you start using the pen, and it's totally worth it. So I got one, didn't use it, returned it, and then eventually bought another one, and now I use it. So like it's one of those things that takes a while if you're not using one, but. So anyway, we have the blank layer. It's set to soft light. We have a brush set to 30, and you can either hold down Alt to select a color, or you can hit the little color eyedropper tool to select the color. But we want to find a color in the highlights, like this nice pink color here, right? And I select that, and then I switch. Well, no, let's double click on it and open up this color picker thing and pull it up a tiny bit and over to the left. So you're making it a little lighter than it is, and hit OK. Then switch to the foreground color and the background. And you want to select a color now in the shadows. Not all the way, like in the blacks here, but like a darker color, like that one, like this brown. Double click on the brown again, open this, and pull it down and to the right, like that. So we selected the first color in the highlights, like a light pink, and then double clicked on it and opened this up and moved it up and to the left a little bit to make it a little bit lighter of a color and less saturated. And then we switched to the background color, went to the shadows, and picked a color from there, and then pulled it down and to the right, so a little darker and a little more saturated, and hit OK. So now we have our two colors, right? And we want to start with the dark color first. So everybody, let me pause right there. You guys all with me as to what I've done to get to this dodge and burn step?
Yeah.
Melissa, Ra,
Yes.
you guys are all there with me? Okay, cool. And so this may be different. There's different ways people do dodge and burn. You can do like layer, create a new gray layer, and then use the dodge and burn tools. But then you have to use two different tools. And here you can just switch using X. You can the X key. You can switch back and forth between dodge and burn very easily. Rather than having, if you use the dodge tool, you have to switch between the dodge tool and the burn tool. And that's also creating another layer on top. That's like this gray layer that you're creating. Whereas here, you're actually, I mean, it is another layer on top, but I've just found it to be more effective doing it this way. So what you do is take your brush, make it smaller. You want to make it pretty small, not pore size, but you know, almost really small. Light brush again, 10, you know, opacity of 10 or so. And you go in the dark areas. And let's put on the helper layers. Let's put on the gray. So you see them in here close. You want to make the pimples are made up, or these spots on our skin are made up of dark spots and bright spots. That's what makes something look three-dimensional. And so you want to flatten that out by bringing up by making the dark spots brighter and the bright spots a little softer. So you even them out, and that evens out the skin. This looks much more natural than frequency separation. However, it is very tedious. I mean, you have to get used to it, and then you get in the flow, but it's very time consuming. But you want to start in the dark, because if you make something bright, if you start with the brights, it is so obvious. Bang, right away. You see how drastic it is? You know, when I do that, you can instantly see the change when you use when you start with the brights and just make dark things bright. So you don't want to start with the dark things and make them bright. You want to start in the dark area and make the somewhat brighter areas in the dark area darker, and then move your way into the light area. So I hit X to switch back and forth. I'm going to pick the dark brush, and I'm going to go in. I'm going to make this a tiny bit smaller, and then I'm going to go in, and anywhere I see a little uneven spot, a little spot that's a little bit darker, or that's lighter in the dark area, I'm going to fill it in here with the dark color. And you just go in slow and steady, little things. Again, this is one of those things, if you can see a drastic change immediately, you're doing too much. That's why I'm painting with a brush that's only a 10 opacity, because it doesn't, you want it to almost look like you're not doing anything. And you have to zoom in and out with this too. You can't do, if you do it all super close in, then you can't really see what you're doing on a greater scale. And so that's where we're at with this one. Everybody, I won't go through the entire face and every single pore with this, because it's can take a lot of time. But everybody with me on this question so far about about this step?
No questions for me.
Does anybody else here do this or anything similar to this?
I've never done this personally. Trying to look at your screen and look at my photos.
Okay. So going to click it on and off. You see that? See the difference? Starting to even out those little bright spots. So this is Mike. There's two different parts. First, you do it on a small layer, like a small level, like this tiny, the micro dodging and burning. You do the small amount. Then you can do the larger shadows and stuff. Like see how there's big shadows under her nose and things like that, or the highlights on her nose. Then you go in and can do a more overall larger dodge and burn with a bigger brush. But I do that on a separate layer. So again, you just take your time with this. We come in, let's go over to this trouble area. That was the big one over here on the other side. And I'm gonna come in and kind of just darken these little here. But that's the whole thing. The whole point of this is that you're not just smudging pixels and just erasing them or just pushing them around and stuff. Because what's the point then? Like, why do we have these super high resolution cameras and all this detail and all this stuff? People start using frequency separation and they just smush it. I'm not saying I don't use it, but I use frequency separation more for straightening out clothing than I do for actually people's skin. Because I mean, you can use it, and there's ways to use it subtly, but most people overdo it and make people look completely unnatural. And it's like, I'm trying to go back to an area where it's like as if I'm shooting with a film camera and I'm processing the image in a dark room. Not super, you know, I don't want to have to do all this. If you get the lighting right in the first place, if I had lit her a little bit better and less with softer light and stuff, I would have had less to work with. But so now I've gone in over here and I've darkened the bright areas, and now I'm going to lighten, hit X and switch to the bright and take down some of these darker spots within that same area. See, you start to lighten them and it just like magically starting to smoothen out this whole trouble area over here. And also that, I guess it brings forth the having a good makeup artist would be good. She did her own makeup, and you know, having a good makeup artist and a good hair, somebody to keep an eye on the loose hairs and stuff like that, saves you so much time in Photoshop. So, if you guys that are down there at the bottom, if you want to check out the stream, it's if you go to NYCapture, NYCapture, NYCapture photography on YouTube. Just search that or Google it, or there's a link tree in my bio. You can find the live stream there, and you're welcome to join along and see. And if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. But here we go. I'm going to be done with this area. And let me show you again. I'm going to pull back. And now let's take off the helper. Well, let's do it with the helper layer. On and off. And now take it without the helper layers on, just the color. Do you guys see, can you actually see the difference there? And I mean, again, it's not 100%. We're still, I would take more time, but do you see what that does?
Yeah, I definitely see it different.
And it's much more natural than just smudging everything. What do you think, Melissa? Do you use this at all, or are you?
I have in the past, but I'm usually having to edit about 40 images that you would wear.
Yeah.
But don't really get to do this that often.
but I do really enjoy going back to doing this occasionally.
Yeah, I'm starting to try to. I want to get into two different schools, like you said, to one to have it just be if it's like a headshot corporate session, like get the lighting right, get it right in camera, and then just do a few blemishes, quick touch up, done, and that's it. And then when it's my fine art, I want to be much more selective and only edit one, like one out of the 200 shots I took, one of them to print, and that's like a because when you used to shoot film, you'd shoot 24 shots or something or 36, and then you'd take them to a darkroom, and then you'd maybe only print 3 or 4 of them out, and it took you time to develop them and to print them and everything, and it was cost money. I want to get back to that where it's like a valuable resource.
Yeah, I've been really down and take fewer images during my shoots, and clients aren't missing anything. They don't need to have a handful of great images. They're super happy.
Yeah, I mean, they can go for that kind of thing. They could take pictures of each other with their iPhones. They want you to create something that just that they can save for when they're old and whatever, and they can look at in this magical image. And yeah, it's got to be a handful. I mean, maybe not just one, but like they don't need 300 shots. They'll never look at them again. I mean,
like you said, if you overwhelm, it's worse. You're worse off.
Yeah,
just a handful of images.
Definitely. So I think we're gonna stop with the access. You can go in here, keep down spot healing. So let's move on to a couple other techniques. Another couple things. One thing I would do now is to see that she has. I'll show you how to do quickly the larger dodge and burn. So make another layer and switch it to soft light and put the helper layers back on, and take that brush and again maybe start with darker, make a big brush, big soft brush, and I'm gonna maybe just contour the face a little bit. So like some more shadows down here, even out the chins a little too bright, just little touches. If there's bright spots, I'm taking them down a little bit. Under the eyes there, take it down a little. Smooth, even it out a little. You don't want to totally flatten it. You want some contours, but just little taps. And over the lips here, this seems really bright right here. And on the lips, I can make the brush smaller. I'm going to go in on the brush, on the lips, and kind of even those out. This can help to shape the lips. You can go around the edges of the lips. Kind of contour the nose a little bit. And then hit X, switch to the light brush. Come in, maybe lighten up under the eyes a little bit there. Wherever. Maybe her chest. I'm gonna make the brush larger and make this, hit X, switch to the darker brush, and take the highlights down a little bit on her chest. A little too bright down here. And maybe even the shirt is a little too bright. Right, so that's a way I can just kind of even it out a little bit. So you don't, because when you stare at the image and you see this, your eye gets drawn to the brightest part. You want them drawn to the eyes and her face, not her, her clavicle area or whatever, So that's maybe a tiny bit the top of the hair. Right. Yeah. Right. So there we go. Now I'm going to take off the helper layer and look at that. See that? It just kind of evened it out a little bit. and maybe dial it back. The opacity is at 100%. Maybe take it off all the way and slowly dial it up to say 55. That looks good. So again, that goes with the overall theme that I had before, that you don't want to do these huge changes. So I just did that all over the whole image, and it was too much. It was just drastically changed it. So I dialed back the opacity so that it looks, you know, more natural. It doesn't look like a huge change, right? So on to the next layer. So again, just a quick recap. Why don't you, I'll just quickly reset and just say, if you want to watch along the live stream, we're at, it's NYCapture Photography. If you go to YouTube and just search that, NYCapture Photography, or there's in my bio, you can see a link tree and there's a link in there for it. And we're doing a live stream. First things we did, we're opening Capture One, took down the sharpening, took down the clarity a tiny bit, flattened the image out a little bit. I got rid of the lens correction and just kind of flattened it out, and then opened it up in here. And we used a few different tools, the clone stamp and the spot healing brush and the patch tool to get rid of little blemishes. And then we went in and did some dodging and burning on a micro level, on a very small level. And then on a more global dodge and burn here with the larger. And now let's get into a couple color adjustments here, right? So she's got the red, little red spots in her eyes, and she's got some red, you know, on her chest area and stuff like that. So if we want to take the red down, here's a technique for doing that. If you go select down here, the little circle, go to hue saturation, and then you make sure this little check mark is selected, the little selector. But I'm just going to first, before I do that, pull up the saturation all the way. And you see that? And that shows you what the colors are. See the red? See how much red there is here? Red under her eyes, red here. So take the saturation back down to 0. And I'm going to pick the little picker button here and find a little red spot like this one here and pull it all the way up to the right. Okay, basically did the same thing, but by selecting that, it changed this from master to reds. So whatever you select, if I select here, it's going to switch it to yellows. But because I selected something that was red, it's messing with the red channel. And what you want to do here is then adjust the little slider behind here, because we only want it to affect the reds. So I'm going to take this slider where the little yellow is, click it, and slowly pull back. So see how it got rid of the yellows on the hair? I'm going to keep pulling back slowly and slowly and slowly, because the skin is going to be yellow, and so we don't want to affect. So now it's just, that's pretty good. It's just the reds here. The regular skin tone is fine. It's only selecting the reds in these certain areas, right? Everybody see that? And everybody with me on that one?
Yes, sir.
And now what you can do is take the saturation back down to 0 and slowly pull the hue slider to the right towards the blue so it gets cooler to about, I'd say about 9 worked, 8, 9. And if you double click on that, click on the little layer, the hue saturation, the eye, so that you can see the changes you made. And you see that, her chest, how it evens it out, makes it more yellow and less, less red. And so, but we don't want it affecting, see how it affects the lips? We don't want it affecting the lips and some of the other areas that we don't want it affecting. So click on the layer and hit Control I or Command I and invert it. I like to then click back on the little hue saturation part. I like to crank the, go to the red channel again and crank the saturation up again so that you can see. Well, you're not going to see it that way. But you, never mind, skip that step. Just put the saturation back. One thing you can do here is actually put the saturation down -1, -2 if you want to do that as well, not just slide it over to the blue. But you've inverted, select on the layer, on the black, and then come over here, take a paintbrush, and make sure to switch this to white so that white is your foreground color. And then you want to paint back on the areas you want to be red. So it's a white brush, my opacity 100% flow, and paint back the red on the lips and the cheeks a little bit. And I think that's good. Yep. I think, or did I just do the reverse? Are you killing me? I'm teaching you guys something, and I think I just did the reverse. I masked out the red on those areas, and yes, I did the reverse. So you invert this back. Don't invert it. Just mask out over the areas you want to. So let's start that step over again. I just totally, so I don't confuse you guys. I'm gonna go here, pick a hue saturation layer, and then pick the little selector and go find the little red spot, because the reds are what I'm concerned about. There's too much. And bring that all the way over to the right. Then we want to select down here, little slider, and take away the yellows. So it's just those reds. Then we can take the saturation back and hold it over to the blues a little bit, so like about 8. Now it's affecting the whole image like this. So what you can do is either block out with the black brush the lips and any area that you don't want it to affect, that you want to keep the reds, you can black it out. And I like in the eyes, it took down some of that, but we want under the eyes, around the cheeks, you want a little bit of rosy color and stuff. You want some natural, that's fine. I just didn't want it really on the chest, is the main thing. So that's it. Okay. And now, or also you could see there's a little bit of reds in the, there's a little bit of red up here too. Or that's probably orange in the hair. That's a red too, yeah. But I'm not gonna mess with that. Not mess with it. All right, so now we're at the stage with this image. I think that's good enough for Photoshop where we're at here. Eyes. This is a good tip. So with the eyes, here's a way to make them pop. There's many ways to do this, but here's a cool one. You go to down here and you go to curves. And again, select that little selector and go into the pupil and find the little black spot and click on that and press down on the down arrow on your keyboard a couple times. Pull it down. Then click on the white, like if you have a reflector, you know, like I have the softbox here, or there's a bright light, you have a light or something like that. Click on that and pull that up. And you keep pulling that up and up and up and up and up, almost all the way up, as far as it goes, because we're going to dial it back later. And you see that? Now, invert the mask. So you select the mask and hit Control-I to invert it. Get a white paintbrush and come in and paint this back in. I leave the iris, I leave the center, the pupil black. but paint the iris in. And if you feel like the softbox is getting too bright there, that's in here, switch back to the black brush. Maybe take the opacity down to about 35 and then fill it back in so it's not so bright. And a way to check your mask here that you've made is to hit the backslash key. And you see that? It makes it red like this. That's showing you what's affected. So I paint here, I'm painting with the X. I'm going to put the opacity back up to 100 and go back around the edges here so that it's really close to the edge. Make a perfect circle. So this is a great way to check what you've masked out. Maybe, and then put a spot in for the pupils. So I cover the pupils are not being, the red is what is not being affected. And see how it's soft, where the white softbox is, it's kind of shadowed is because the opacity, I took the opacity of the brush down. And then switch back to the white brush and I can come in and adjust it. So that's a good tool. And then hit the backslash again and you're out of there. And then that's way too bright. Pull back with eyes, always pull back so you can see them from a distance. And that's way too bright. So I'm going to take the opacity of that layer down to 0 and slowly start to bring it back up until you just see it start to come alive. So I would say around 25 is good. All right, everybody got that one? And then I'm gonna do something very similar for another one, but you got that?
Yeah, got that.
Dominique, how are you doing? But I'm glad so this is a similar thing. Go down to the bottom, make another curve. You don't know how many curves I make with making sure that little selector tool is selected again at the top. And I forgot there is a way, I think, in settings to make sure that always, yes. If you click on the little menu at the top right of that, you can do auto select targeted adjustment tool. So that's always on. And I always keep that on. And you don't know how many curves I freaking make using these. I never used it now. Now I'm a curve man all the time. So same thing. One check mark in the dark area and pull down just a couple notches. Now one check mark, like check up here in her skin above the eye and highlight and go up a couple notches. 1, 2, let's go 3. Right? Now invert this layer, select on the mask and hit Control I, Command I. Now get a large white brush and opacity 100, make it bigger than the eye like this, and zap, zap, look at that. And now I hit the backspace key to see it. And I'm going to paint back in with the black brush because I don't want her hair. I don't want her forehead, sides. And I don't want the nose. See how the nose just got touched a little bit? It's like soft. That's what you want for the nose. So if you need to pull down the opacity to like 20% or something and paint that area, that's what you want. You want a soft, you want it brighter here, like a pair of sunglasses or something. And that's it. So you hit backslash. And again, this is too much. So dial the opacity back of the layer. Slowly start to add it up till maybe about seeing like 30, 45, 42. Pull back. If you click on the layer on and off, you see that? How it just added contrast and makes the eyes pop and makes them like, you know, no sharpening there or anything. You just, maybe that's a little too much.
Maha, did you have a question?
Yes, please. I hear the description and
Like, is there a light?
Oh yes. So if you link, but if you go on YouTube, type in NYCapture photography. You're welcome.
I'm just getting a couple loose hairs. But now if you see for file management, for the most part, do you see how all of these layers that are on top, I'm keeping the original layer. I used to edit, this is pretty much non-destructive, so I can go back to that first copy layer and still make changes to it. Whereas I used to copy all of them and create a new layer and then a new layer and a new layer, and they were all like, you know, once you got to a certain point, you couldn't go back. So now I try to do as much as I can non-destructively so that I can go in and make adjustments to each and every single layer. That's something that took me a while in Photoshop to learn how to set up my process so that I can go back and adjust things. There's certain things that once you do, you can't go back. You're at a new stage and that's it. But like if I did frequency separation, once you do that, you're at that stage moving forward. You can't go back beyond that. But like here, say I wanted to go, I think that looks good. So we're not gonna mess. Now for the moment of truth. We're gonna go back to capture one. All right. So everybody caught up? Anything else that you think? Or, you know, one other thing you could do here is hair. Very similar to the eyes. This is a cool thing to do to hair, is do a curve. Go to curves. Select the eyedropper. Pick a highlight in the hair. Well, let's start with a highlighter and push it up a couple of notches. And then go to a dark spot and push that down a couple notches. Right? Now invert it. Select the layer and hit Control-I. And now get a white brush. Paint it on. Make sure your opacity is at 100, because we can always dial down the opacity of the whole layer, but you want to see the change it's making. You see that? And then again, the backslash key to see what's affected. That was a big game changer for me. The backslash key, being able to see this mask, and now drawing back in where I don't want it affect, like I don't want it touching her face, and I don't want it touching the blue background here. So I can paint that back in. Now that way it's only where I want it to be. Right? And then again, dial down the opacity of the whole layer. I'm going to make that say 55. So you see that on and off. Just subtle contrast. So if you see the beginning, let's go to the first layer and hit Alt and the eyeball, and you can see that's before the edit and after. Still looks natural. Doesn't look crazy photoshopped, I don't think. Just clean and got rid of the blemishes and things like that. Would everybody agree with that? Do you all feel like I made her look like a crazy monster, or? So now to the point of going back to capture one, right? So I finish in capture one. And so you just hit save because this is a TIFF. So if I just go file save, it'll save the TIFF, and then it'll open that, include the layers. Yeah, I include the layers because I saved the TIFF, and then I can also just come back to this Photoshop where we're at and edit in Photoshop from this point. Or I can go and capture one and do stuff in there and start from that point and capture one. Sometimes you make too many changes and the file is too large to save it as a TIFF. So you have to flatten it, merge all the layers together and flatten it, save it, open that in Photoshop, in Capture One, and then save this as like a large Photoshop document instead. So you have the TIFF version, the flattened TIFF to edit onwards in Capture One, and you have the Photoshop document if you want to come back, so that you don't have to lose all of these changes. Their little tidbit. So we're back here. There's the unedited one, and here's the edit in Capture One. See that? I mean, really, you don't need a lot, but we're going to show you for fun the power of Capture One, because that's what Maxie said. You want to see it, and whoever else. I guess what's his name left. Unfortunately, I guess too much for him. But here we go. Create a new layer here, and we're going to call this skin. And then I am going to hit B for brush and M for mask, so you can see the mask. And if you just make it around the outline of the face, right, like this, go down here to her shirt, just rough estimate, doesn't have to be totally spot on, and that's it. Then go over to the layer and right click on it and do fill mask. Now that's a rough fill, and then I'm going to just paint the arms in here. Okay. Now what I like to do, I'll come in and erase. So hit E for erase, make a brush, and I'm going to erase the eyeballs and the eyelashes. I feel like the eraser opacity. So erase those, erase that. So we're erasing the things I don't want affected, and the lips. And if somebody has a lot of makeup, like a lot of on their cheeks or on their eye makeup, then you kind of want to get rid of it on that, because you don't want it affecting that. Right? But what we're doing here, we're going to smoothen out the skin. So we got this look, and then I right click on it again, the layer, and do refine mask. And you look at the radius and pull it up to keep going, keep going. And then she starts to look like Elphaba from Wicked. So let's say about 220, hit apply. Now you still got to go back in and erase again from the eyeballs, like it's still got some on the eyes, but it's kind of gradiated on the everywhere else where I had it blank. It's like made it the opacity softer. So yeah, see, it's pretty good. Lips. Switch to the brush, maybe. We lost Dominique there. I guess, does she not have Capture One, or didn't she say she wanted anybody else? So it's only Maxie. Anybody else in here have Capture One?
I don't have Capture One.
Oh, I thought
it's my first time actually checking it out.
Oh, okay. Anybody else in here have it? I mean, I'll just show you that this is only a couple of steps. I'll show it to you so you can see what it does. You then go to, after this is masked, you then go to color, which is the fourth tab over here, and go down to skin tone and take the little picker tool. And I'm going to hit M to get rid of the mask so I can't see it. Pick an area of the skin, like a nice color, like maybe the cheek here, and click that. Now I've got my skin color over here, and I start to make adjustments to it. I'm going to change the hue a little bit. You don't want to go to it, like there's saturation. You don't want her to be that orange. Maybe a tiny bit of saturation. The lightness, see, you can pull up the lightness of the skin. Just subtle adjustments with these. But the uniformity is good. The hue uniformity evens out so that the skin tone throughout her skin is even. So if somebody has like blotchier skin or this or that, this uniformity slider is down here, the hue slider, and then the saturation slider so that the saturation is equal throughout the skin, and the lightness, if they have brighter or darker spots on them, you can even out that. So they're very, you want to be subtle with these because it's a very powerful tool. And you can adjust the different tones of the skin too. If you want to make it, you know, a little lighter, or if you can even deselect, you can select from a different area. If I want to go more down here, more in there, it'll adjust. So this is just a great tool too. If you see that before, see it before and after, it just kind of smoothens out and makes it, it's like putting like a, you know, some makeup over her whole face there and her whole, and kind of just matching the skin tones better throughout. Okay, so that's one thing you could do in here. Another is like if you wanted, it's good, these masks are really good. You make a new mask for the eyes. I know I did those curves in Photoshop, but you could come in here and make a brush, hit B for brush and M for mask to show the mask, and you could come in and paint around the eye. And this is where we could sharpen the eye a little bit or tweak the colors a little bit or something like that if you want to adjust the eyes a little bit more. So I'm going to go M, get rid of the mask, and let's add some basic stuff here. Let's add a little bit of highlights into it and a little bit of shadow, and take the clarity up a little bit. There we go. The clarity slider's doing a lot. Clarity. And heck, I want to go, do we want to mess with the color? Let's go to the color wheel, the basic color wheel, and add, use the picker. Go pick a color here. Blues. Let's saturate them. You see that? You see how saturated that blue got? And pick another one, maybe the greens in her eye. Saturate that a little bit. And you can really make the eyes look really nice. So that's that. See the eyes on, that's the face and everything on. And lastly, I go down to the background layer. That's just the overall adjustments in this program. And let's just do some overall adjustments. Again, I'm going to go to the details tab, and let's put the sharpening up. It really doesn't need a lot of sharpening. I don't even think I would even sharpen it, but you could sharpen it a little, the overall sharpening, tiny bit. And I like to add a little grain. If you look at the background, there's no grain right now. And I'm going to pull up the grain slider a tiny bit so you can see it in the blue background. And the grain just kind of makes the skin, all the pixels of the skin, kind of smoothen out by adding this grain. It's much better than Lightroom, the grain in Lightroom. The sharpening, the grain, the color toning, all of that stuff is far superior in Photoshop. I mean, in Capture One than it is in Lightroom. Just the way that it works with the files, it's better. But so what else do we want to do? That's about it. I think the overall looks, right? So we got the overall look. You go back to the overall exposure. Now maybe I hit there's contrast. We don't want that much, but maybe a tiny notch of contrast, 1 or 2 notches or something. You wanted to add a couple notches of contrast or something. And then the overall color. I'm going to go to the color wheel here and the overall color balance. And I'm going to pick the wheel here. Here's blues. You know, just go around the wheel and see what looks good for this image. You can do HS, you can do highlights and shadows and all that stuff. You can do 3 wheels and all same stuff you can do in Lightroom. I'm just going to do an overall adjustment and make it I'm going to go just make it a little bit cooler in the blues. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe go in the warm it up because it's got a lot of blue. I don't know. Actually, I'm not loving those. So let's just leave it like that. But this also does have, just to show you guys quickly, there are like presets, just like Lightroom. Not that I love that, but there's all kinds of different like presets you can get and stuff like that. I'm not loving what these are doing, but anyway, that's it. And then the final image. So there we have the before. There we have the after. I would even maybe take down the skin layer, just the opacity down a little bit. It's a little too much. And that's it. And so the final would be to export it. So I go to the output wheel, and I do for Instagram and stuff like that, I do it at the long edge at 2048 pixels, the short edge at 1600, and the resolution at 300. And I'm also outputting in RGB instead of Adobe RGB, as we talked about earlier. And the quality, you could take the quality down to like about 80%, 70%, something like that. And that's it. I hit process, and it will process that, and we now have the JPEG. So yeah, that was the whole process from opening it up. I mean, in Lightroom, the difference would be just in Lightroom or Camera Raw, like if you just open, I'll do super quickly. If I open one of these in Photoshop, I go through my photos in Bridge. Hi, Robin, there. I go through my photos in Bridge, and I have it set up so that when I click on it in Bridge, it opens in Camera Raw. And Camera Raw basically has all of the tools that Lightroom has, as far as, you know, like the curves and all these other things. Hey, Robin, I'm kind of wrapping up the last 15, 20 minutes here. We were just going through editing process here.
Are you in the room soon?
Yeah, if you in about 20 minutes or so.
Okay.
If you want to check in, if you go on to YouTube to NYCapture photography, you can see the live stream and you can see me. And so I'm curious, while she's pulling that up, what do you guys do as far as your raw? What do you use? Just open Lightroom and adjust, or do you use Camera Raw, or how do you do it?
I use Organic to.
And then what do you edit in, like?
I go to Lightroom and stuff and
Okay.
change.
And the rest of you guys, what are you doing these days?
I usually just upload everything on Lightroom, just select about an edit ones that the client wants me to edit.
Cool.
Each out, like,
Yeah.
got it.
I have like Portrait Pro on here, I think, as well, for like or makeup and stuff like that. But so anyway, this is opening it in Camera Raw. So I have it set like bridge is my priority. This is where I cull. It's kind of similar to Lightroom, and bridge is just free, I think, and you just go through, and this is where I cull. And then when I double click, I have it set that double click automatically opens it in Camera Raw. And then in Camera Raw, I would go, and again, you can do all those things like the optics, or where I would change the distortion. See, I don't like the distortion correction. I like it looking smaller like that. Just me. But I do like the vignette correction on. See, there's the vignette. I do like the vignette correction on 100%, but not the distortion. So I can do that. I can take down the sharpening in here too, just like we did in the other thing. I go to detail, take down the sharpening. And then the basic here, I could go into the white balance a little bit if I need to tweak it a little and get a little more blue. And then kind of flatten out the image a little again, like we did before. Maybe take the highlights down. I can tell the highlights are way too high on this. The highlights down. Maybe take the overall exposure down a couple notches. Yeah. And then pull the shadows up a little. I'll worry about the giant bright spot on the left. That was the light, hair light. I'll worry about that later. But that's how I would mess with this. Maybe take the saturation down just a tiny bit because it's saturated. Could also zoom in, take the clarity down here like we did. I don't like to mess with clarity too much, but the skin is so sharp that I could take it down a couple notches. This isn't a high-end beauty and it's just for a client. And that's it. And then hit open object and it opens Photoshop. And so that's similar to going like in Capture One, making the adjustments, flattening it out, and then opening it in Photoshop. But that's just using Camera Raw, which is, works well with Photoshop. Plus, this is a smart object. So if I double click on it, I can go back in to it'll open Camera Raw again. And I can make more adjustments and stuff like that. One thing somebody pointed out is normally last time I said hit Control J to duplicate that layer. You don't want to do that if you're working like this with Camera Raw with a smart object as your first layer. You want to right click and hit new smart object via copy. Not just copy. You want new smart object via copy. Because now if you go in here, the second layer, make a change to the, like say the saturation all the way up, and hit OK. If I get rid of that layer, take the eyeball off, see it wasn't affected on the bottom layer. But if you just copy it, it is affected. So just a little tidbit to know there that I learned the other day. Always learning new things. So take this down, take the saturation down. And anyway, back to here. And so now we're back to our same starting point where you could go in and start messing it with doing all the editing stuff. But that's Camera Raw. And why don't I show you guys one last thing in that two little things I got, not a free plug for them, but you'll see Pratik around here, photographer. You'll see him on Clubhouse. He invented this, the infinite color panel. So I got this one, and if you click on it, infinite color panel, just hit create. It'll open up all these, a curve, a color balance, selective. Some look good, some don't. You just keep clicking on create and switching through it. And it gives you all different kinds of toning and coloring and stuff. Just ideas. It's a cool little plugin. An image with that bright yellow and the pink, it's going to be hard for it to find a blend of something that works. It's better for like a landscape or for something with more detail, not a shot like this. But anyway, that's really it. I was thinking I'll show you one last thing. If you guys have any questions about anything that I've done so far, or any thoughts about it, or things you would have done differently, or things you don't like or do like, or whatever.
Hey Alex, thank you for live stream.
Yeah, so what if I open the first layer, like if I go into here and I open my first layer, I'm gonna open another image. Let's open this one here. These are natural light. And the way I have it set up is to be a smart object. So it opens up into Camera Raw right away, and so that I can make adjustments in Camera Raw. And so it is a smart object because it's able for me to make these adjustments, right? I'm gonna pick a different RNI film. This one, like, so I'm gonna pick this color profile. And it's gonna open it up from Camera Raw as a smart object in Photoshop. Now, every time you open a file, I screwed up, and it's not going to necessarily be a smart object, but highlights. Again, I hate with this lens. I've got to take the distortion down. I don't know. So maybe somewhere in between. That looks even. And then open object. So when this opens, it's a smart object. You can tell because you can see that little icon in the bottom of the image, right? And so right now I'm going to double click on it and it's going to open Camera Raw because that's the adjustment I made with the smart object, right? So let's put the saturation on just for test sake so you can see. Let's put the saturation all the way up. Okay? Now on that layer, the saturation is going to be all the way up, right? If I hit Control J and just copy it, just a straight up copy. Now I'm going to double click on the copy layer, right? And that's going to open Camera Raw again. Now I can take the saturation down. You see that? And now if you look at the layer below it, the saturation is down on the layer below it as well. So your copy is affecting the first layer. Remember, the first thing I said was when you open in Photoshop, you want to protect that first layer. You don't want to start making changes to it. So if you go in, let's go back in, let's delete this copy and go into the first layer and put the saturation all the way up again and hit right click on it and do new smart object via copy. Now double click on the second layer, the new layer, and pull the saturation all the way down. See, we're gonna have the black and white one on the top, and I bet you if I uncheck this, it's gonna be the yellow one underneath. You see the difference? And so yeah, I never knew that before recently either. But let me show you guys as a tack on, as an added bonus. I'll show you quickly something I learned the other day to edit that I'm loving for it's how I edited my my profile shot here. And I won't go through the whole process, but I'll show you just a little. Get rid of this. It's basically and actually it starts in Lightroom, so I'll start it in Lightroom, right? Is to take the image in Lightroom. Let's take one of the ones, the natural light ones I think are good. And where's simple? That, okay. Something like that. There we go. Now, the first step is to change the camera profile. So I had to buy these camera profiles. It was like $85. I'm not saying go run out and buy them, but it's really nice images is the company, and they make some different color profiles. These are like I don't know if you use these in Lightroom, you guys. I mean, some people use like, you use your presets and everything, but camera profiles are pretty awesome. All these different things you can do. So I go to this one, the RNI one that I bought, and it's RNI Films Basic. And then I'm going to reset all. Okay. Now you might want to, first step is the white balance if you want to adjust that a little. It's a little too orangey there. So go to there. White balance is adjusted. And first step is to take the blacks and pull them all the way to the right. And the next step is to take the contrast and move it to the left, most all the way, but not all the way. Let's say about there. Take the exposure down a little bit. That. Oh, I forgot to do my lens correction. And so you're looking at this and you're like, what the hell? Why that doesn't look good? You know, that looks all washed out. That's even more washed out. So if you look at this, look at the top, at the you're looking at the histogram, everything's in the middle. It's not all the way over to the left, like super blacks, and it's not super bright or anything. We just want it nice and even in the middle. And I look at this and I come in to her, and what he basically, what I basically learned is, look at the skin here. And if you put the blacks back, you see how the skin has all these little black dots in it? Kind of like when we did the dodge and burn. You saw how you were making the dark spots brighter and the bright spots. Well, look at all these dark spots, right? Look at the black spots on the nose. Look at all the black. Look on the chin, this black, or underneath black, right? And what I learned is basically that if you look around your room right now, you're not going to find anything that's black. Now you might say, well, I'm looking at my television screen is black, or my pen is black, or whatever. That's painted black. In nature, there's very few things that are black. When somebody paints, like the great masters, they don't paint with black paint. If hair is dark, then they use blues, and they do use different shades of things, but they don't paint with black paint. And so if you look at the skin and you pull out all of these blacks, look at how much more natural the skin looks. And look at like underneath her chin here, or the shadows under here. They're peachy color, like their skin color. They're not this like muddy gray, because your skin isn't gray. That's not what it looks like. And so that's what, the camera and the programs and all these things are all about, blacks and whites, and creating contrast and creating sharpness and all these things. That's the other thing we do, is take the sharpness down. Oh yeah, take the sharpening off. Sharpening off, blacks up, mids down a bit, and look at that skin tone compared to putting the contrast up and putting the blacks back where they were. Look at that. Can you all see the difference in the skin there? Robin, any thoughts on the skin there?
No, I think I'm just like in awe right now. It does like bring the whole image to life. It's like it's popping out at me.
And now it is
That's a cool trick.
it is and always take the sharpening off too, that because it's got so much sharp. I mean, look at how sharp my eyes are here. I mean, like that's what
seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so you still see the gradation from darks to lights. Like you still see that there is highlight here. You see that it gradually is but it fades into the like look at how the hair starts to blend off into, because I used a wide aperture lens, how it blends naturally off into this. Pull it back again to the blacks the way they were and the contrast up, and look at the sharp line between the two things. So it adds, it just makes it a much more painterly kind of look. And so then when you go into edit here, then I would go in and edit in Photoshop. So I right click and I go to export. Is it export? Which one do I use for tonight or in general? Tonight for about 6 years now. And believe me, if you look at the junk I did to my files in the beginning, so destructive, just like deleted raw. I remember the first shoot I did, I like deleted all the raw files. I didn't even know. I just have JPEG, like half JPEGs. I like shot over the memory card and like wasted the raws. And then editing, I would like so destructive and so just smudging over everything and just trying to get the quick fix to see what it looked like, but like not taking the time to build the layers. And that's the point of this, is that's what I was saying. If you missed the very beginning of this, but I just think of it theoretically, like the first step, open the raw file and flatten it out a bit, right? Get rid of the sharpness and the contrast and all that stuff. I mean, look, you have a great camera, you like the way it looks in your camera, you like the way it looks when you open it in Lightroom, then fine. Just take off a couple zits, export, and do a little quick edits, and bang, zoom, you're done. That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But and I like that better than doing hours and hours of Photoshop to make it look like an alien, make it look like somebody who's not even real. But to me, I'm trying to get to a point where I literally flatten everything out, get the lighting right in camera first with my natural light, or whether it's with strobes or whatnot. Try to do better at lighting in the first place, getting a good even exposure. That's why like a fill light is really important to get that, to fill in that extra so you have information in the blacks. Because I used to not care about the blacks. Everyone taught me don't overexpose, because if it's too much highlights, then you can't get the information back. That's true. But if you can pull up the blacks, but then they're like murky blacks if you don't have enough information in the blacks either. So you want to get a good overall even exposure to be. And then the whole thing is, let me open this in Photoshop here. Edit in Adobe Photoshop. Oh, open as Smart Object in Photoshop. That's what I wanted to do. And so the first step, get rid of the sharpness, get rid of like, some of the clarity even, get rid of, the blacks and the etc. and so too much, not on every photo, but just certain types of portrait. If you want a painterly kind of portrait look. And then you start to go and make the skin look more natural. And then you start to go in from this part and start to add the contrast back. And so you know, the first step, I mean, already this just like looks so much better even than that other shot, because this was natural light and it was just much more even lighting. And I'm also at wide open aperture, and so it's like less sharp, so it's a little softer on the skin and stuff. So get it right in camera. But you'd want to make those, you'd want to make a curves layer so that you can see it more, you know, like just make a basic S curve or something so that you can see it more contrasty. Just to edit, just to get rid of the zits and whatnot. You want to do that first, is make that curve, so make it look more like it did in camera, just as a thing. And then the other thing you could do is start to bring up a selective color layer and start to mess with colors just to get an idea of what you want the color toning to look like. You know, you can mess with just all different, whatever you want to do. But this is just like playing around with color to get a quick idea of what you want the end. This is not actually doing it now. It's just getting an idea of what you. Anyway, these are helper layers. And I would put them, select them both, hit shift and select them both and put them in a folder. So you can click that on and off, and that's a helper layer. And as we said, Maxi, right click on it and new smart object via copy. And now you go in here and start to do the zip thing and clean up the skin a little bit and do all that we did before. But I'll just do super click, you know, zit, whatever. I'm not going to spend all day and go all through all the steps that we did before. But that's this, right? Couple of loose hairs, things like that. These red spots. And so now you're good with, you know, we're not good with that, but we're going to pretend we're done with all of that. Scan. I mean, it really doesn't actually need all that much. You can do that, that thing I showed you earlier with the patch tool. I don't know, Robin, if you've seen this one, but you select the area, like this dark area under the eyes, and then drag it down, and then hit Command or Control Shift F. Slide the opacity down. 20. There you go. Get rid of that little, brighten that up a little, clean that up.
Is it essentially
the opacity of it? Yeah, you're basically,
cool.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's good for under the eyes and by the sides of the nose and stuff like that's where I basically use it, is under the eyes, the sides of the nose, under the lips sometimes, and right above the nose too. So be a good one like here, or like say this bright spot on the nose. What would you do to get down the bright spot on the nose, Robin?
I mean, I'm like dodging.
Well, that's where this can be. That is, yeah. I mean, that is what I do, but this can be good. You come like here, and then Control Shift F, and pull it down to just until it starts to darken up there. So it's still there, but not as bright. I mean, that's if you want it still there. If you want it totally gone, then yes, you need to get into like, yeah.
It's so, it is like you're painting.
Yep.
Anyway, you know, you really are creating like work of additional reach.
Well, so this is where it gets, and I won't go through the whole thing because it'll take ages, but this is where, so you get into, now take off that layer because that was just the test. But see the skin here?
My computer just decided to do an update, so
Nice.
it's 3:30, so I don't see it, but I'll grab my laptop.
Cool. You with me still, Melissa and Maxie here, and Benjamin? You guys all seeing this?
Yeah. Actually, I don't want to.
Cool. Yep.
This technique of getting like this and then getting back from wrist cinema. They just take this.
Yeah, like S-Log.
Yeah, that's cinema.
Yes. Yeah. It's, you know, like, again, it's not like there's anything wrong with, I mean, like, that's why, like, I love the look. That's why I shoot Sony. Some people like Canon. Some people like that. They love the look, right, of the shot right out of the camera. And that is great. And not everybody has to be a Photoshopper, and you don't have to get into this. It's just when you want to dig deeper, like when I printed this image, I don't know, I'll show you guys on it's not going to show it well on the camera, but let's see if, yeah, you can see it. Like, look at, I just think it looks great. Like, and compared to the way that it looked when I edited it, that was from 4 years ago, and it was just in my kitchen, and like, I liked it, but it just was, I don't know, it was just nothing special. And then learning to like edit it better, I'm like in love with it. I'm going to do a whole series. I'm having somebody come over tomorrow. She's got a little bit more olive complexion. I've got some beautiful flowers, and we're going to do something very simple like that. I'm going to do a whole series, like, and purposefully doing it so that it's like painterly and just these soft transitions. And you know, it's funny. I thought about how I saw a painting with somebody where the light was hitting the side of their face that was facing away from the light. And I was like, that looks really cool. Usually you see your face like you're looking into the light. But this was the opposite side. And I'm like, wait, that's what my picture and my profile is. That's what she was doing too. And so the shadow is on the opposite side of the face. And I was like, wow, that's actually in the shot that I already did. So now I got to play with that too. That not lighting to be like, oh, you want to, like, play with light more. Be more aware of where it's. I started shooting too in camera in black and white, so that I literally just don't get bothered by the color. Like, I'm going to get the coloring right and everything, but just worry about the shadows and the darkness, not and the transitions, rather than worrying about all the rest of the information. So anyway, in here, the few things that I would do here now is make a curve, right? And I want to go in here, and I'm going to pick a spot where this highlight is, say here. I'm going to pull that up a couple notches. That's it. Now I'm going to make another curve. Oh, I screwed that up. I'm sorry. What you do first is you go to the channels, and you hit Alt and select the RGB channel. Or no, Control and hit the RGB channel. And that's going to select the highlights here. Then I go back to my layers, go down to the curves, click a curve, and now it's just going to, the curve is just going to affect those areas in the highlights. So I'm going to come in here, click on this, and put that up a couple notches. Then I'm going to do the same thing again. Go back to channels, Control, double click on it, select it, come down to layers, make them another curve. And I'm going to go in here and find a little shadow and pull that down with the arrows a couple notches. And I'm going to keep doing this. Maybe I'll do one more. Do another channel. Click on the RGB, hit Control, select that, curves, and come in here, there, go up a couple notches. So I've made these three. Let's see something. See, if you look at this, something that's really interesting that I never do this, right? If you select on the nose here, and I'm looking at the info panel, I don't know, it's probably the type is really small, but it's got the CMYK values of everything. The K value of this point on the nose is 0. So there's no black at all. Over here in the highlights, 0. Nowhere in the scale, there's a 1. That's okay over here. Now we're getting to 3 over there. That's not good. We don't want 3 over here. Don't want black. So I go over here and I see that there's 3 or 4 over in the shadow over here. I'm going to make another new curve. Channels. Go to RGB. Control. And then layers. A new curve. We go over to this shadow area here. So there we go. Now it's in 1%, 2%. Got rid of that 4%. Now I'm going to go to a level. So hit here and get levels. And because I'm pushing around with these curves, that white point, like the midpoint is totally changed. And so I'm going to hit Alt and move this. See, there's my highlights. I'm going to move this, keep going till the highlights disappear, and then just go a little bit to the right of that. There we go. So see, I've see the levels. And now back to Curveville. But we can also get in here and start messing with color a little bit. So if you see, okay, this looks a little too reddish to me, right? So let's go in here and do let's do a hue saturation level here. And do the same thing we did in that other edit. Go here. See, that's the red. Yep.
Mess with getting back country, change like the blend to just luminosity. Maybe that might just because when you messing with color as well.
Yes, yes, that is true. It's yeah. I mean, you could do it with luminosity as well. There's no question. Yeah. I mean, it's just taking out saturation. But see, I didn't want it to affect the lips. So I can mask it out, paint a black brush and just go over the lips or anywhere else I don't want it to affect that. Now you see it looks like there's banding here at the bottom too, but there isn't. So if the banding gets really annoying, then you can create a new layer. You can merge them and make a new layer just to That should stop the banding. Yeah. Just the visual representation of it. Anyway, you keep going with many layers. Like that's what this technique is all about. It's just many curves. Then the next thing, let's do another one. Go back. What you could do, another thing is to affect the shadows, is control on the RGB, create a layer, and then curves, and then invert it. So now you're affecting the shadow areas if you wanted to do there. And you could go pull down in the shadows a little bit, a little too much. I am a talent agent. I mean, I still do that. It's still my job, my main job. This is my side hustle here. It's just my passion and something I love. But yeah, I represent actors for. So yeah, you just keep going and going and going with this into different slow like curves and just curve color. You can do let's go in and do a selective color layer. Maybe we go in and do a selective color, and you want to take the yellow. It's a little too yellow for you. So let's take the a good way to tell what the colors are too, if you can't see it, is as much is I'll get rid of this layer and make a hue saturation layer and just crank it up all the way. So again, that you can see this is what the colors are. And now you see that the gray background. You would think it's gray, isn't it? And gray should be what, white and black, right? But it's not. It's blue because the paint that's used to make blue. That's how they make white paint. So that is going to cast its color on her as well. And so we might want to take out some of the blue in the background. So to do that, you could go to blues and take that down, the saturation.
And on and I was able to either to
yeah, no, I should get going too. Well, my pleasure. My pleasure. I had
Thank you so much. Nice meeting you.
You too. Thank you for listening. Yeah, I have tomorrow I have a shoot, which is always fun, and I'm just painting the background. But I have like then an actor thing too. I've got to sit here and do a Zoom with like 20 actors wanting to audition for me. Which yeah, that's it's all right. It's all right. I try to eat like snack. They don't really appreciate me eating while I like to like eat a couple snacks, but it's kind of, I guess, distracting for them.
That sounds like fun. No, I work like in the morning, but like I wrote it.
Nice. Cool. Well, see, I would still keep doing this one for a while. Just slowly working on tones and the color and the curves and stuff. But I think that, as opposed to if you look at, you know, like the original image, it's so, you know, blotchy and contrasty, and you just start to see it more. Like I just start to see, like before I loved that. I was like, oh my God, that looks beautiful. I love the golden light and stuff, and it's cool. But when you start to see all the little differences in the skin, the blotchy, and all the transition between the you know, you start that now I need to pay more attention when I'm actually shooting it. So
day and night, the two characters. They haven't. I've only been.
well, we did before. I did a more traditional just edit, like a headshot edit. This was the, where's the before now? This was the one we did first, was just this one. Like, you know, it's still keeping it pretty much, not that one, but this, keeping it pretty much the same and just editing, you know, getting rid of the skin. Like if you see, like cleaning up the skin and getting rid of the blemishes and doing that kind of thing. But, which is fine. But this, like this is just a different type of style. So, cool. Well, Maxie, I really appreciate you modding there. You know, I broke your mod cherry quickly there. Did a great job, and I thank you guys on. And also, the live stream should be up. I'll save. I mean, it's gonna be up there. So if you ever want to watch it, just fast forward through things to see things, or message me, DM me if you have any questions about a certain part of it or something like that.